I grew up in Gainesville. Our house was directly across the street from the Gainesville Midland shops. So my dad, to go to work, had to walk about 50 yards, I guess, across a street into the shop, which he loved to do. And, you know, to put it mildly, his love was the railroading. And I found this 3-ring binder that my mother put together, which covers a lot of his history of his railroading and so forth. My dad grew up in Gainesville also. He quit school at 11 years old in order to help provide for his family. Most of his older brothers had married and moved away, and it left a large part of the responsibility for his mother up to him. So he quit school and went to work at the Gainesville Iron Works. He worked there from the time he was 11 years old until he was 16 years old. He learned a molder's trade. He was making, and I found this in here, he was making $2.25 a day working at the ironworks. He had the opportunity to go to work on the railroad, which is what he wanted to do. And he went to work on the railroad for $1.75 a day in order to have that job. So his first job on the railroad was as a fireman, where of course all the engines were steam, and that was his first job. And he worked there as a fireman, and I'm not sure how long he fired. I think about 5 or 6 years before he became an engineer. He was one of, I believe, 7 brothers. All of them were engineers except one. He was a machinist. So it was a railroading family for sure. Well, at that time, that's the only way you got freight into Gainesville. There were no 4-lane highways. There were no tractor trailers. Everything came in on the railroad. And railroad was really a popular vocation, I guess you'd say, because it was so prominent in the life here. So that's what he did, and so I grew up on Grove Street in Gainesville, as just across the street from the railroad. And in fact, he got me a job as delivering freight around town when I was in high school and worked in the summers as that. He was determined that I would go to school, and he worked to that end. And he said, "You can go anywhere you want to school. I don't know how we'll pay for it, but wherever you want to go, you can go, and I want you to go." So I ended up, of course, going to Georgia Tech. You shoveled coal from the coal tender into the firebox to maintain the steam for the locomotive. It wasn't a particularly dangerous job, no. Although in his later years, I think it was in 1954, he was an engineer, of course, then. He turned over the steam engine turned over. I mean, over, not just laid on its side. My dad was not hurt at all. He said he hung onto the windowsill or something and swung around as the train turned over. His fireman was injured and was trapped by a steam pipe, and and suffered serious injuries and was never able to go back to doing that job. So, you know, it was a serious accident, but he was fortunate. He came along in that era when they were first getting started. And he was very easygoing. He'd work 6 days a week in his overalls, but on Sunday, he would put on a coat and his suit and a tie and go to St. Paul Methodist Church. He loved his job.